Hello and welcome to In-Depth program. Today's topic of discussion is a total ban on diesel vehicles in India. So we will discuss about the background of the topic, then we will discuss about the proposal, who makes diesel cars in India. So what is the issue with the proposal? What is the reason people prefer diesel vehicles? Why are car makers moving away from diesel? Didn't petrol engines too need upgrades as a result of the shift to BS6? And what about the buyers of diesel vehicles? So what is the upshot overall of this proposal? First of all, moving on to the background, a panel formed by the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas has recommended a ban on the use of diesel-powered four-wheel vehicles by 2027 in cities with a population of more than 1 million, and instead transition to electric and gas-fueled vehicles. The Energy Transition Advisory Committee has also recommended that city transport should be a mix of metro trains and electric buses by 2030. Diesel-driven four-wheelers may be eliminated as soon as possible. Therefore, a ban on diesel-powered four-wheelers in all million-plus cities and all towns with high pollution has to be enforced in 5 years, that is by 2027, the report says. Also, commercial vehicles may transition to LNG in the short term and no diesel city buses addition be allowed in urban areas to drive towards transition towards clean fuel urban public transport in about 10 years. What is the background of this proposal? The panel's recommendations came in the wake of the government's stated aim to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and to produce 40% of its electricity from renewables as part of its 2070 net zero goal. Diesel currently accounts for about 40% of India's petroleum products consumption according to estimates by the Petroleum Planning and Analysis Cell. The proposed ban will have a significant footprint. A large number of cities in India have more than 1 million people and include not just the metropolitan centers but also smaller towns and cities such as Kota, Raipur, Dhanbad, Vijayawada, Jodhpur and Amritsar. Who makes diesel cars in India? Maruti Suzuki, the country's largest passenger vehicle manufacturer, stopped making diesel vehicles from April 1, 2020 and has signaled that it does not have plans to re-enter this segment. The diesel engine is, however, part of models sold by Hyundai and Kia and Toyota Motors' Innova Krista range. Tata Motors, Mahindra and Honda have discontinued production of 1.2-liter diesel engines. Diesel variants are available only for 1.5-liter or higher engine capacity. Since 2020, most car makers have taken significant steps towards deleveraging their diesel portfolios. As a result, the contribution of passenger vehicles to overall diesel vehicle demand has fallen to just 16.5%. compared to 28.5% in 2013. So what is the issue with the proposal? It is not yet clear how the proposal for a ban, if accepted, will unfold and how practical it would be to implement. This is especially true in the case of medium and heavy commercial vehicles that are used for the transport of goods on highways and for buses plying in most Indian cities where diesel is the mainstay. Even if the ban on diesel for commercial vehicles were to have a longer transition time, significant disruption could still happen. Around 87% of diesel fuel sales are in the transport segment, with trucks and buses accounting for about 68%. Uttar Pradesh, Maharashtra and Haryana make up almost 40% of the diesel sold in India. While it seems easier at the moment to convert diesel trucks to compressed natural gas, that is CNG, there are certain limitations including CNG being used for shorter distances and its lower tonnage carrying capacity. Now let's discuss what is the reason people prefer diesel vehicles. The higher fuel economy of diesel engines over petrol powertrains is the one factor. This stems from the greater energy content per liter of diesel and the inherent efficiency of the diesel engine. Diesel engines do not use high voltage spark ignition spark plugs and thus use less fuel per kilometer as they have higher compression ratios, making it the fuel of choice for heavy vehicles. Also, diesel engines offer more torque, rotational or turning force, and are less likely to stall as they are controlled by a mechanical or electronic governor, thereby proving to be better for haulage. Why are car makers moving away from diesel? The higher compression ratio of diesel engines means there are increased emissions of oxides of nitrogen, which is one of the main drawbacks of diesel engines versus petrol. The biggest blow for diesel, though, has been an external trigger, the Volkswagen emissions scandal, which led to an increase in the negative perception against diesel across markets, including India. Also, the reason why Maruti Suzuki and other car makers announced an exit from the diesel segment was the rollout of the new BS6 emission norms from April 1, 2020, and the prohibitively high cost of upgrading diesel engines to meet the new standard. The government's decision to leapfrog directly from BS4 to BS6 is the main reason car makers such as Maruti Suzuki cite for the unviability of retaining diesel in their portfolio. Didn't petrol engines too need upgrades as a result of the shift to BS6? While petrol vehicles needed upgrades for this transition, these were limited to catalyst and electronic control upgrades. But for diesel vehicles, the upgrades were more complicated and entailed higher cost. Car makers had to put 3 pieces of equipment: a diesel particulate filter, a selective catalytic reduction system, and an LNT, that is lean NOx trap, to meet the BS6 norms all at the same time. This was vital to curb both PM, that is particulate matter, and NOx emissions as mandated under the BS6 norms. For most car makers, the economics of the conversion simply do not make it worthwhile to continue with the diesel option after the transition to BS6. And what about the buyers of diesel vehicles? There is the issue of the price of diesel and consequently of running the car. The Indian car buyers' romance with diesel powertrains lasted nearly a decade, with diesel cars accounting for 48% of passenger vehicle sales in the country in 2013. The main reason was the sharply lower price of diesel as compared to petrol, a yawning ₹25 per litre at its peak. But this changed when the decontrol of fuel prices started in late 2014. The price difference has since come down to around ₹7 per litre, the closest the two fuels have been in price since 1991. Consequently, diesel cars accounted for less than 20% of overall passenger vehicle sales in 2021-22, less than half the share they had 5 years ago. So what is the upshot overall of this proposal? A move towards a phasing out of diesel and ultimately petrol as well vehicles is in keeping with action by most federal governments across the world. In the case of India, however, automotive experts foresee difficulties in implementing a total ban on diesel because car makers and oil companies have invested heavily in transitioning to BS6, and all that investment could go down the drain if a complete ban were to be implemented. And in the commercial vehicles segment, where diesel penetration is very high and alternative fuels options such as electric vehicles, CNG, liquefied natural gas and hydrogen are still only being explored, and a total ban would cause serious disruption. Oil marketing companies claim that emission standards under BS6 have necessitated oil refineries to substantially reduce the level of sulfur in diesel, and that the Bureau of Indian Standards has brought out the specification for diesel with 7% biodiesel, which further lowers the emission footprint of diesel. So that's all for today. Stay tuned for the next episode. Thanks for watching.